You can be the best boxer in the world. You can get all your jabs in, you can get all your points. But if your opponent starts kicking you in the head and the ref doesn't call it, you are now doing a different game. When people say they don't care about politics, I'm always like, oh, don't do that, because politics cares about you. Because politics affects every part of your life, whether you want it to or not. You may as well engage with it because it's going to engage with you.
Welcome back to another episode of Gloves Off. I am your host, Tara McGowan. I am so excited about the conversation that we're having today with one of my friends who is also one of my favorite creators, political commentators, best-selling writers, and also shares my last name, but no relation, Leigh McGowan, who many of you probably know better as PoliticsGirl on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you get your political news and content. Leigh, thanks so much for joining Gloves Off.
Oh, thank you for having me. I think you have got me on a day that I'm not only gloves off, but filter off. So this should be interesting.
I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen you on a day when you're not those things. So that's really
I
exciting that it's going to be
guess.
plus plus today.
I've had it.
Just today. The day that we're filming is Tuesday, March 3rd. What today are you angriest about?
Well, today I'm angriest, I think, because I'm raising a teenager, right? So he's finishing his senior year. He's got into college. His college is absolutely extraordinarily expensive. Like, I don't know how people are supposed to do that. You know, he's finishing high school. He's dealing with the way boys interact with each other, which is part of the culture that we're dealing with now about, you know, the male loneliness epidemic and the red pill culture and all of this stuff. So I feel like today, the first thing that bothers me, of course, is being a parent and this navigating this world right now, trying to be present for my child who is struggling in this world that he is supposed to be a man in. And I have raised him to be a certain kind of man. And he's not getting good role models from the rest of the world. And then trying to function as a working woman in this world and not to bring the anger I feel every single day into my parenting, because I just feel so irate that we have such incompetent fools running our government. These men that if I had raised, I would feel ashamed of. You know, if you take the Epstein files on top of that, I think, are we supposed to listen to these guys as they take our soldiers into war, as they distract us from the horrible things they have done so they can gain more power, more money, more influence? They're just going to take $10 billion from American taxpayers to start the Board of Peace and then launch a war 2 weeks later? None of it makes any sense to me. It all comes from this like terrible beta, pathetic behavior from these men who constantly talk about being alphas. And then I'm supposed to raise a boy in this culture that just says, you know what, baby, don't be nice to people, be mean, be cruel, take what you need to get, because that's how the world works. And it is very hard to navigate that balance. And I think that is today what makes me
Yeah,
most angry.
that's so real. And that's so hard. And
Yeah.
like, we don't talk about that enough. I
Well, you
think
know, we
that,
talk about kitchen table issues all the
yeah,
time, right? And like there's a million parents out here trying to deal with their children and raise children at their kitchen tables in this environment. And I'm sorry, it's not, it's almost impossible. The world we were promised, the world I was raised in, this world where be a good person, work really hard, have integrity, do the things you're supposed to do, check all the boxes, and you will have a good life. That doesn't exist, which is why MAGA even existed in the first place, because so many people felt cheated by the world. And they were able to be picked up by this man that said, you are right, you're not happy. You are right, but it's not your fault. It's these people's fault and these people's fault and these people's fault. No, this is a culture that has not taken care of its people for decades. We have been regressive for decades. Even as a constitutional republic, we've been regressive. We haven't made a proper constitutional amendment that made any difference to anybody since 1971, right? That was the last time we changed the Constitution that actually affected anyone, right? That was something that like said, I hear the people and I'm making change. Since then, regression, 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 regression. What's more for me? Huge divide between the haves and the have-nots. And now we sit here and we're trying to raise our kids in a world that no longer exists. And I think that that is not only a shame, but something that must be changed right away.
That's right. And also, and I am not a parent, and I cannot speak from experience at all, except the experience of being close to my friends, and especially my girlfriends who are. It is the hardest job in the world. I have nothing but unbelievable respect for you to do it. And we also know it's the hardest job in the world because look how many people screwed up with the folks that are running this world. Or I don't want to give them all the credit for that, but like this is, I mean, and this is where I want to try to turn this into a conversation that is vision forward, solutions oriented, right? Because I also believe that like I have to believe this by the way, but I do believe that we are experiencing the last gasp of this corrupt patriarchal system that we have all been living in. And like everything you talked about the world that we were promised, it was always a lie, because as women
Yeah.
we both know that we we knew that that was a ruse very early. I don't know when you figured it out, but as soon as I started a professional career, probably before that, obviously, in terms of being treated differently, but to raise men today, boys into men who take personal accountability, who put others before themselves, who are not focused on wealth and power and greed, as opposed to protection and safety and care, right? Changing what folks understand as strength versus weakness, all of these things. Like, I do want and must believe that what we are witnessing in terms of the absolutely unapologetic, shameless, proud, hubris driven approach to like, this is what it's like to be a man. I'm going to like conquer lands, and I'm going to bribe you, and I'm going to hijack this, and I'm going to lie to you about this, and I'm going to rape this person. I'm going to abuse this person. Like literally, I'm just going to do everything I can to fill the massive void that can never be filled in my soul. um, and without any care or concern at all about the repercussions of that, and the casualties of that. Like, we're watching this play out on the domestic and the world stage in the most potent way that it's like, I oftentimes now, and I'm someone who has been a student of history, I've been a journalist for many, many years running a news organization. I feel as though right now I am literally sometimes have to pinch myself to be like, am I watching a dramatized version of what I've always known as the corruption of our government and where it's going? Or is this really real? And what is the end game here? And I'm
Mhm.
curious, like, as somebody who, you go so deep into the news of every single day and the issues and do such a brilliant job of contextualizing them and providing that catharsis I mentioned, like, how how do you like, does it even feel like it's continuing to escalate or hitting a plateau of sorts? Or how do you see all of this corruption, all of this deceit, all of this violence that's escalating? Where does it go? Where is it headed towards right now?
Yeah. Well, I think that's up to us. I think where it goes and where it's headed is up to us. I think that the more people who can clarify in their minds where we actually are versus where they wish we were, and that goes from those of us at home to leadership in Congress. Uh, they need to get right with where we actually are as opposed to where we dream we were. When I see Democrats acting like it's 1990 and we're going to reach across the aisle and we're going to have these conversations and we're going to work, I think that would be lovely. And wouldn't that be great if that's how we lived and that's how we could do? We could communicate like that and we could make bills together. But that is not where we live. I often make the analogy that you can be the best boxer in the world. You can get all your jabs in, you can get all your points, you can win every single match that you're in. But if your opponent starts kicking you in the head and the ref doesn't call it, you are now doing a different game. You are in UFC fighting. And if you don't learn to take a kick to the head and give one back, you will lose. And the problem is you're fighting for all of us, right? And I think that, so it depends on what we do now. I think that what you are talking about these last gasps, yes, 100% last gasps of the patriarchy, of the success of capitalism as a founding principle. These two things is what we see in the id of Donald Trump. He represents every single one of those things. The most patriarchal, I am better than everyone, money makes good, I can do whatever I want, whether that's grabbing women by the or women or taking things or screwing over other businesses. It doesn't matter
Or
because
defying
I'm
the
at the pinnacle.
Constitution, defying court orders,
Whatever
defying
it is, the
laws,
rules
it
don't
doesn't
apply
matter.
to me
That's right.
because I'm a rich white man with power. And the amount of people in our country that go, I agree with that. Or, yeah, he is, or he must be special because he has this. We have put money first as the thing that we worship, as the thing that we look up to. And people will say it's God, but it's greed. It is 100% greed. Greed has always been the major problem in this country. And you can track that all the way back to slavery. When people say that our biggest problem and our primal flaw was slavery, I would argue that it's greed. And greed is a part of slavery. It's how much can I have? How much can I take? How much can I have for myself? And if I have some, I cannot share it with you. It's this inability to share with others. And we are seeing that now from our president down to all these guys that run Silicon Valley, these guys that want to take over every single part of us and fully surveil us and have full surveillance systems and automatic weapons that can be launched by machines, not even by humans. This is the
Mhm.
discussion we're having.
That's
And
right.
we had one tech bro be like, that's a bridge too far. This tech isn't ready for this. We can't have this. Then we had another one be like, I agree with him. And as they're taking a break, he swoops in and makes the deal himself, right? And you're like, how much money do you need? Now, listen, I can tell you, I think Sam Altman is deeply in debt. I think that the entire AI universe is so overvalued. I think he needed the government contract to keep himself going, but he was willing to literally kneecap one of 5 other guys who has a far better technology to get the deal. And our government was like, cool, we'll take the deal from whoever gives us what exactly we want. This is the kind of last gasp stuff that I think we really need to be careful of, because I have said it for a while now, like, I am 100% ready for the matriarchy. And I think the thing is that people are not aware of what the matriarchy is. They think that it's just the opposite of the patriarchy, right? The patriarchy is men on the top and everyone else below them. And that's not how the matriarchy works. The matriarchy works with children on the top and people holding them up. What is best for the children? What's best for the weakest? What's best? How do we take care of everyone so that the children thrive, so they have a safe future, a safe planet, clean water, good education? If we are looking out for the kids, we look out for all of us. It's like when we say, I can't believe this is America. And Black women are like, you can't? Right? Like, they think we're mental because they've been living through this for forever, being held back, being treated differently, being dismissed, being discouraged. We're just finally seeing it, A, as white people, B, as white women, because for a while our privilege was balanced by our proximity to white men, right? Now we're like, holy hell, like, you're going to shoot us in the street in our minivan as we drive by a protest. You're going to take out a white man at a protest. And the Black people in America are like, yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. Forever. Like, wake up, right? So this is the concept of woke, right? Which the government loves to use. As a pejorative, but really, this is the concept of being aware of what's been happening. And it took us a long time to get aware. But now I'm like, you know what? We can't keep doing it like this. Money first, men first. We can't. Look what they've done. Look what they've done to the world. I can promise you, if women were in charge, they would prioritize health and safety. They would prioritize children. And they sure as hell wouldn't create Rape Island. Do you know what I mean?
No.
They wouldn't. So at
They're
this point, I feel like, okay. And then that doesn't mean men can't lead. It doesn't mean they're not good rulers. I'm married to a great man. Like I said, I'm trying to raise a great son. He deserves to be a leader if that's what he wants to be. But the concept of who comes first in our society must adjust, because we've done it this way and we're at war again.
and it always felt up until now as part of sort of this theme of the last gasp that we're witnessing, that we're experiencing, who knows how long it'll be though, that it was just, a pie in the sky idea, notion, a laughing talking point about a matriarchy. And it's like, actually, I think this thing is burning itself to the ground. There are enormous casualties. There will continue to be more casualties, but it is about building something entirely different to that point. And the vision of it has to be one that protects children and vulnerable communities at the heart of it, and not as a talking point that is just continuously diluted, watered down, pushed aside for the benefit of folks that have currently more privilege in the system that we live within.
Yeah,
But
you're
it's gonna be
looking
really,
you're looking to the future. If you're taking care, I mean, like, literally Whitney
yeah.
Houston style, I believe that children are our future. Like,
Yeah.
if we are looking out for how well the kids are doing, we're looking out for all of us. If we are making sure we have an educated populace, we're looking out for all of us. That's a tax-paying populace, right? Every single thing we look out for to make sure the kids thrive will make us all thrive. And I'm talking all kids of all different colors and creeds. If the children are doing well, if they have a safe and healthy environment to grow up in, if they have enough food, if they aren't being abused, if they aren't being stolen off the street, if they aren't being stolen by a church or a pedophile or whoever, then the world will be doing better. And I think that's how we have to look at it. And that is what a matriarchy is. It doesn't mean women are in charge. It means children are centered as opposed to men being centered. And it's just not working this way. And I think the perfect example of that, when you talk about last gasp, is what we're learning from these Epstein files, right? What we're learning has been happening for not 4 years, not 10 years, like decades between countries and world leaders and Hollywood leaders and music leaders. And like everyone that we have put on a pedestal is somehow indicated. And it doesn't matter if it's Deepak Chopra or someone else. Like these are people that have been held up by our society as the pinnacle, and they're all involved. So what are we going to do about that? Because to me, this is the perfect example of, yeah, burn it all down. If this is what we get,
And you think about all of the people who their silence made them complicit, right? The protectors and enablers. It's not just the
yes.
perpetrators, right? The perpetrators are the first ones, right? That we need accountability and justice for, and we're not going to get with this Department of Justice, but there's other ways that need to be pursued, and we're seeing it happen in other countries, but also
Mhm.
here. There's a lot that state officials can do, state attorneys general, governors, et cetera. We're starting to see investigations in New Mexico, where one of his properties is. I want more of that. I want more pressure on Democratic governors and attorneys general, because there's a lot they can do. I don't know what New York is doing, but there's a lot that New York can be doing in that respect. But also the protectors and enablers, right? All those folks that didn't think it was their place to say anything or do anything, they were grossed out or whatever, or they turned their blind eye.
There's a lot of people involved. Like I think the CIA is involved. I think Mossad is involved. I think multiple governments over generations were involved. And I think a lot of people were like, I don't want to pull that thread. Like I don't want to be the one that pulled the thread, right? Like they didn't want to do it. But now the thread's been pulled. So I sat on CNN last week and I sat on a panel. The guy beside me was trying to justify that it's not even a big deal and Donald Trump probably didn't do anything anyway. I wasn't having that. Then I was talking, there was a woman across the table whose name is Bev, who's a British UK citizen. And she was like, look, we probably won't have any criminal cases brought against any of these people. And if we do, it'll be because of like, we can follow the money train, or we can, the same reason we got Al Capone, right? We got him on, on tax fraud, right? Tax evasion, not like racketeering or murder or all the other things he'd done. Yeah. And I understand what she's saying about that. But I said, you know what? I'm going to push back on you a bit on that, because I actually think that's a defeatist attitude that we often take, like, well, these guys are all going to get away with it. And I'm like, no, I don't think they should, which goes back to what I'm saying about the matriarchy. I go, no, I don't think they should. She's like, well, where are you going to find the evidence? I was like, take the dogs to New Mexico, take the cadaver dogs to New Mexico, go to the island, take the cadaver dogs to the island, and then go back to all your email chains and be like, who here goes through, like, do it like that. Are we going to get that from Pam Bondi's Justice Department? We sure as hell are not. We watched her in court just absolutely, blocking every option that they could ever have about Donald Trump, and then ignoring an entire row of victims standing behind her. She's like, I would talk to victims if they came forward. And the people on the commission were like, great, stand up. And she was like, like she couldn't see anything. That is, we're not getting justice from her.
No,
But that
Pam
doesn't
Bondi
mean
is
justice
is
won't
protecting
come.
herself, right? Pam Bondi is
Yes.
protecting herself because Pam Bondi now knows that she would go to jail as part of this cover up. I mean, this is the biggest cover up in our nation's
As
history in
she
the world.
should.
And it's not going to, again, to this last gasp theme, is we're not going to go back to the way things were in any way, shape, or form. And we need to start seeing that as a positive. We need to start focusing on how do we create accountability, justice, and healing, so we never go back. Because all of this enabling, all this defeatism that we're talking about, that is why these folks are being protected and don't feel like they will ever have to see any accountability, right? Like even before this state of lawlessness and corruption at the White House level, at the Department of Justice level, we were still putting the richest most evil perpetrators of crimes, be they financial, sexual abuse, what have you, into cushy prisons in this country, right? Like there have always been different realities and different quote unquote levels of justice based on your wealth and your power or access to wealth and power. And that is, I think, that is the truly the toxicity that is spread across this country in terms of apathy, cynicism, and mistrust, right, in governments and institutions, to the point where this is what they want. They want folks to disengage. They want folks to be uninformed and not angry and just feel like this is the way things are. That defeatism is their source of power. And that's
Correct.
exactly what you and I are combating with the work that we do in trying to
Yeah.
inform people. And so and it is not easy because there's a million things every single day. And I think that you do a really, really masterful job of connecting the dots between these things and also just like picking the right battles, Leigh, right? Like I think that's something we all have to think a lot about, right? Because it's very hard. It's why I led this conversation with that question of what's the thing you're angriest about today? And you shocked the hell out of me with it. And I loved your answer. And it's so
Sorry about
powerful.
that.
No,
I'm
don't
like,
be.
that's
I thought
the
that was
truth.
so powerful because it's real, it's true, and it's also personal. And the reason any of us are connected to this work or just engaged in it for folks who are listening is because there is a personal connection to it, whether it is our children, our spouses, our partners, our lives, our friends, like our family. It doesn't matter. Like we are all living through this together. And so, like when you think about the work that you're doing, the value of it, like how has that changed as things have gotten so much worse? And as you look ahead about what we need to build and what we need to do differently, I'm so curious how you're thinking about that, engaging the massive community you've built in this work, because we can't use former playbooks or strategies when the game has changed, to your point.
Yeah. No, listen, I got into this work because people were misinformed, and I didn't think that they were misinformed because they wanted to be. They were misinformed because their lives were too busy. They didn't know what was happening, and they thought politics was always going to be the same. That was the standard thing I heard from people. They were like, "Who cares about the midterm elections? Who cares about local elections? Like it's always the same. Politicians lie, blah blah blah." And I was like, "No, that's not true." And when people say they don't care about politics, I'm always like, "Oh, don't do that because politics cares about you because politics affects every part of your life, whether you want it to or not, whether you engage with it or not. That is everything from how fast you can drive to if you have autonomy over your own body. That's all politics. If your street gets shoveled, politics, right? All of it is politics. And so you may as well engage with it because it's going to engage with you. If you don't get your mail because they cut off the mail service and give it to some private company, that would be politics, right? Like that is a choice that has been made for you. And I wanted people to like understand how the system worked so they could then change the system because they knew it. If you tell me the carburetor on my car is broken, I'd be like, cool. What one is the carburetor, right? Like I wouldn't have a clue. It's
Yeah,
not like I'm like, oh, just get in there and fix it, right? Like
that's
I don't
right.
know which part the carburetor is. So I thought, let me try and explain to people how the engine works so they can go in and fix it themselves. So they know what they're looking for. That was the first thing. The second thing was to the point at the beginning of this episode. I have a child. I brought a child into this country thinking it was, honest to God, a different country than it was. When he was a tiny baby, I put him in one of those bumbos, and you don't have a child, but I'm telling you, it's like a little squishy thing you stick their little fat legs into, and they sit forward. And we put him there for Obama's inauguration. Okay. And he's sitting there. We got a bomb on the TV. And our family was like, we are bringing him up in a world that's different than we grew up in. We are bringing him up in a world that is getting better. This Martin Luther King, the arc of justice is long, but it bends towards, the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And we were like, here we are at this moment of justice, and we're bringing our boy up into a different kind of world. And then literally the only president he remembers really is Trump. I mean, Biden was there, but he really only remembers Trump because Trump never shut up in the 4 years Biden was in office anyway, right? And
A whole generation.
everything, an entire generation. And it is the worst of America. It is everything that we have been told we are by people who hate this country, rich, braggy, I'm number one. I used to say, like, can you fricking imagine going to school and telling all the kids you were number one? Like America's been doing that for years and it's gross. It's gross. And by the way, we're not number one. And one of the things that I think helped with that is what I'm on now, which is social media, right? Once we had access to the entire world and we could see people in Denmark and see people in Sweden and see people in the UK, you start going like, wait a minute, what do you mean they have free college? What do you mean they have free healthcare? What do you mean they leave their babies outside while they have lunch in a cafe and no one's going to steal their baby? What do you mean they all have walkable cities? Like, we didn't know because we were just brought up in the propaganda that we lived in the number one country in the world, the best, richest, most important nation, blah, blah, blah. We, waved our flags and won a lot of medals. But honestly, were we the best country? We're one of the only countries in the world that doesn't have some sort of universal healthcare. We don't take care of our own people. We talk about freedom constantly, but we don't have the freedom to leave our job because our healthcare is tied to it. We don't have the freedom to leave our marriage because our healthcare is tied to it. If we get a sick child, we're in trouble. If we have a baby, we have to go back to work in 4 seconds, even, like if there's no one to take care of that child or we can't afford childcare. It's a broken system and no one is interested in fixing it. And I thought, let me at least explain it. Then let's talk about the issues we could fix. When I wrote my book, it was called A Return to Common Sense because I was like, that's what we need to do. That's why it makes me so bananas that the Republicans are trying to like embrace common sense right now as if they use one iota of common sense, because that's exactly what I was talking about. We need to say, like, listen, you work a full-time job, you should have enough money for rent and to take care of your family. If your child is born, you should be able to stay home with it until it's safe for you to leave them, until you can handle it. Every other country can figure that out. If you are sick, it shouldn't bankrupt your family. You shouldn't have to decide between eating and taking your diabetes medicine. Don't tell me we're the greatest country in the world if that's what we're doing. Those are not common sense principles, the way we live in this country. So I look at this work that I do as a way to not do the news. There's lots of people that do the news. Your group does the news. You guys have local news. You have actual reporters. We are losing news on national networks because they're being bought by billionaires who work for the president, basically. But I don't tell you what the news is. I try to explain the news. I try to say, this is why it matters to you. This is how we can change it. This is how I think you should look at it. And like you said, there's a million different stories out there. And you have to find a way to assess what's the most important story right now so you don't just feel like you're drowning. Because if you try and drink from a fire hose, which is what our news is, you will get hurt and you won't quench your thirst. So what I want to do is I'll take the fire hose, which is hard, and I will get a cup full of what I think you need to know, and I will give it to you so that it's safe for you to ingest and you get what you need. That's the work I'm trying to do. And I think it's effective. I think, I've grown my following a lot because of that. And I think people are grateful to know what's going on without feeling like they're being abused. But it's hard because our news is abusive, because our government is abusive, because we created a culture that's abusive. And I think that's the biggest problem.
That's right. But that is also what's missing from your very accurate and smart articulation of what you do and the power it has, though, is the superpower you have where you do not hide your emotions. This is not, Walter Cronkite, right? Or,
That is
but
true.
this is a bigger and important point about the changing media ecosystem and trust and authenticity and why folks engage with you. It's not just that they're getting really valuable information because they are, but it's because you are unabashed about how you feel about the information that you are contextualizing for them and for what's happening, and that is really powerful. And it's also it's just emblematic of how media and trust in media and trust in information has shifted and changed, right? I imagine that your millions and millions of followers and tens of millions of folks that view your content every day, they are consuming an enormous amount of information and content, but what they're finding valuable is that they feel like they have a relationship with you. I'm very lucky that I do. But like, right, you have, right, the power of parasocial relationships and influence is incredibly powerful. It also puts you in a different position because you have enormous power with a platform, right? And how you determine to use it. And I know you take that responsibility very seriously. But to your point, you're picking, right, the most important story every day of the insane fire hose of stories. But also we know that we have a president and an administration that understands the attention environment, the intention marketplace, and will literally start a war to avoid us talking about Epstein, of which he is clearly culpable of crimes. And I don't believe the talking point that he's just covering up for his friends and allies. That's not how Trump operates. Like, yes,
Oh
I
my
think that
God,
there's
please. He
like,
would throw his kids under the bus if it would help him. Like, this
I
is
mean,
not someone looking out for his
that's
friends.
what he told Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? And she repeats it all the time. And it's like, okay, but like, let's be really clear who he's protecting. It's himself. It's always been himself. And something I get frustrated with because I'm in the same boat as you. We run a news organization. We have to talk about things and contextualize things that are important for folks. We can't straight out ignore them. But I also hate taking the bait because we should all be talking about Epstein every single day. Like when I first texted you and I was like, I want you on Gloves Off because you exemplify gloves off in all the ways and I could have you on any point in time. But it was because of one of your viral clips from CNN that went crazy about you calling out that Republican turd, Trump talking point. I can't even say his name. But for trying to downplay or delegitimize the Epstein story, which I did to Chuck Todd when I was on his podcast a number of months ago, because it was just so unbelievable that it's like, no, 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 no. Like, this is not just a story that gets passed over. This connects all of the dots and everything. And the way that you put it was just so human and real, where it's like, how can you talk about it this way? It's disgusting and unnerving, and not enough people say that. They're all in this kind of performative theatrical game, even if they're on our team, and you don't play that game.
I do
And
not. I do
I
not play
really
that game.
appreciate it, and I think it's
Yeah,
contagious.
well, I think look, I think I'm different. I created my own brand. So, I'm a human first. And I always think when I go on those shows, I'm not there as a pundit. I'm there as a representative of the public, right? Like I'm the person at the table. Like if people used to say, when you watch the Olympics, don't you just wish there was like a regular, just good swimmer on the far lane that was like just kicking, trying really hard so you could really see like how good the Olympians are? I mean, they're all so good that you go, okay, well, that guy's a little bit further. But like just put like a solid swimmer on the side and be like,
Not just
"Whoa,
former
those guys."
Olympians, right? Who are
No, just like an actual person on the side that would remind us how slow we run. You know what I mean? Like how far we could throw a freaking discus. You know what I mean? Like we
I
couldn't
love
do
this
it.
metaphor.
It shows how much those guys are elite. Right. And I think in a lot of ways, it's like when I go on those shows, there are pundits for the right, there are pundits for the left, there are politicians who are just pitching their own stuff. And then there's me, right? And there's a couple people who are out there like me, but are more newscasty people. I think like I'm one of the only people that's a woman because they hate us, and B, um, they do, and B, I'm mouthy, right? I've never not been mouthy. I don't. I think one of the things about it is that when I created this program, when I created Politics Girl, I started with civics in my playroom. Then I went to the kitchen rants, which most people know me from. Then I started this podcast, which is a deeper dive into things. The whole way along, I didn't monetize it for a long time because I didn't want to be doing it for the money. I wanted to be
You and
doing
I
it,
had that conversation early on. I
but it's
remember.
important because I wanted to be doing it to
Yeah.
engage people, to inform people, to educate people, and to inspire them to do better things, that we could have a better world, that it could be better. And if I was suddenly like hawking, fabletics to you when they're in 3 class action lawsuits, it would be problematic, right? So I had to be really careful because trust was first. I wanted people to trust me. Now I think people do trust me because they're like, oh, she's for real. She's the real deal. But that in itself is a commodity. It's something I can work with because then I can say, I think you really should vote for this candidate. I think we really should have this piece of legislation. I think we really should do this thing. And I think there's such a dearth of leadership right now that even someone like me who looks like I'm in the news space, I'm not really in the news space. I'm kind of in like the humanities space that talks about the news. And people trust me in a way that I think that they trust very few people these days. And I think that's an important thing that differentiates myself from others who end up on cable news or who speak online or who are social media influencers. And I think that's something that I take really seriously.
No, absolutely, and you do it well, and you do take that responsibility seriously, and it does mean that these folks and a growing audience of them are going to look to you to know what to do when all of the tools that we have had no longer work, like
Yeah.
elections, right? Or like right, and this is something I was just asked this on someone else's podcast earlier today, and I really struggled with the answer because it's very hard and you don't want to get so dark and dystopian about it. But it is part of our responsibility as folks that are out there speaking truth to power and engaging audiences on what's really going on without these filters and the theatrical bullshit around them because our incentives are actually pure. And that does make it more challenging in certain ways. But like, when we look forward, right, and it's not a secret now, right? There was an executive order draft leaked this week about, which has always been my greatest fear about the midterms in 2028, right? Is that the president declares a state of emergency to essentially cancel indefinitely the elections because he cannot run the elections. They cannot be nationalized as he suggests. They will always be run by the states that is in the Constitution. And yet we also know that he has the Supreme Court in his back pocket. Right, they throw some carrots out with us, like they did with California redistricting, and other things, but because we assume that they're going to overturn the Voting Rights Act, that they are going to uphold his immunity and potentially something of this nature, an emergency power to be able to literally cancel or not hold our elections. And I really struggle with, how do we get our engagement right? Being informed isn't just enough in these moments where we actually need to mobilize folks beyond the things that we used to rely on. Yes, we need to vote, and we need to get as many folks out to vote because they know, and that's why they're terrified that if there are free and fair elections, it will be a tsunami and referendum against them. And yet, this is a legitimate concern we have to start talking about more to pre-bunk for folks to make sure they are prepared. And so I'm curious, as things do get worse, which they will, because if we continue on this last gasp, they get more desperate, right? They don't get savvier. They get more desperate, they get more frenetic, they get more disorganized, and that is powerful. That provides us opportunities and wedges. But how are you thinking about worst case scenarios and engaging your audience in ways that feel meaningful and doesn't just have folks tune out because they feel so helpless?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I don't want people to feel is helpless. And you can feel incredibly helpless. I have days where I feel helpless. There was about 2 weeks ago, and I said when I opened my podcast that like I had taken to my bed for a whole day. Like I went to a meeting, came home, and got back into bed. And my husband was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "No, it's too much. I can't freaking do it." And when we quote unquote, and I'm going to say that, lost the election in 2024, I didn't speak on any of my social platforms for 2 weeks because I had to get my head around what the hell I was going to say to people because no one needed me to be like, oh, it's all over, But I kept wondering, like, is the Democratic government under Biden, are they really going to just hand the keys over to these people who have already started a coup, who they know are lying, who they have all the information that Russia tried to interfere with them? Like, are they really going to? Because to me, it felt like, again, back to the children thing, it felt like all of our kids are on this school bus. We know the bus driver is absolutely wasted. And we're like, well, he's the bus driver. So I guess they all go. And I'm like, it just felt so irresponsible, right? It just felt so irresponsible to just hand the keys over to these people because Donald Trump is a goober. He really is. He's the worst person, but he's not smart. The people who surround him are brilliant. They're
And
brilliant.
dangerous.
They are dangerous and brilliant and truly evil. And that's everyone from Peter Thiel to Steve Miller to Steve Bannon, right? These guys know what they're doing. This is a long-term plan. There's a reason Steve Bannon bought the Stop the Steal website before Trump had even lost the 2016 election because he thought he was going to lose and then they were going to say the election was stolen way back then. And then he won and they weren't quite prepared. This time, they are completely prepared. The fact that half of the country still thinks that the 2020 election was stolen is like, ah. So they have no intention of giving up power because they know if they give up power, they're all going to be held accountable for their crimes, for everything that they've done. They've said it out loud. Elon Musk has said, if Kamala wins, I'm going to jail, right? Steve Miller's like, yeah, if they win, we're losing everything. Steve Bannon's like, I'll be in jail if they win. They know what they're holding on. They're not giving up power. I don't think we won't have elections. I mean, Trump might want that. I think a dictator needs the illusion of elections. The question is, are they free and fair, right? Do I say, you know what, just like I did in Georgia, like I'm coming in here and I'm just going to take all the ballots and then I'll tell you what the count was. That's what he wanted to do in 2020. He wanted to change it. He wanted to send the military in, take the ballots, recount them, and find his 11,780 votes, right? Like That I see more likely as happening. This was fraudulent. This was, this was tampered with, and we came in here and actually we won. That's what I see it as being more likely, which is why I would encourage my audience and why I hope to work over the next 8 months to encourage people that, like, you don't need to vote with the team you've already voted with. They are counting on Republicans voting Republican. They are counting on the people that sit out to sit out. They're not counting on people like my son who just turned 18 to bring out all of his people and vote. They're not thinking about that. They're not thinking about all the people abroad who might want to vote, but we need to be so serious about how hard it's going to be for us. Like, as far as I'm concerned, we should all be voting in person. We should be getting in line and being like, I'm going to be here for 9 hours. Like, this is what I do now because they don't want me to vote. If you don't have a state that you can put it in a Dropbox and know it's going to actually make it to the voting office, don't vote like that. Go get a passport right now in case they change the rules on October 25th that says you need to have a passport in person to vote on that day. And you're like, what? And then you don't have time. No, now they're going to mess with every single element of the voting because they know, A, they are wildly unpopular. This is why we got rid of the Gallup presidential succession poll for the first time in 85 years. They're not telling us how he's doing because it's not good. And they know they're not winning. They know that the economy's bad. They know they just got us into a war that 80% of the country doesn't want. These are not the actions of someone that thinks they have to win an election in November. These are the actions of someone that thinks they don't have to win because they've got it in the bag. It is possible, but not if we all come out. Not if they're counting on a turnout of 60% and we're a turnout of 80%. Not if they're not counting on the young people. Not if they're not counting on Republicans to switch their vote and say, like, listen, I'm a conservative, but this ain't conservative. I don't know what the hell this is, but I don't want it. And the opposition needs to be an opposition. And right now we're in a primer, going into primaries. We need to be putting people up there that want to be fighters, that want to fight. We don't need one more corporate Dem out there talking like it's 1995. And if they're not up for the fight, if they can't take the kick to the head, get out of the way. Yeah. Lead, follower, get out of the way. So I'm going to push for candidates that actually have fight in them. I'm going to push for voters to be as prepared as possible for these people to cheat. And I want to inspire people to actually have something to look forward to, because you are saying, you know, like, we have this future that it's never coming. We're never going back to the way it was. So instead of seeing that as sad, start seeing that as hopeful. Okay, so if we're not going back, which really it didn't serve anyone except a select few anyway, what do we want? And what could we do if we got it? And we should start thinking like that, because hope is a hard thing to kill. I mean, you've seen a single Star Wars. It's hope, man. It's hope that feeds the resistance, right? And I think we could have a far better world than this. I think we could be the country we tell the world we are. I think we could stop these horrible, monstrous men from having everything before they put in full surveillance and robots that can kill us and, divide the world up into 5 quarters that a bunch of rich dudes run. I don't want to live in Elysium. People need to go and watch that movie. I don't want to live like that.
Truly.
And we need to say no. Like, honestly, we need to say no far more often. We need to be much, much, men and women, like, sand in the gears at all times. No, I won't do that. No, we're not doing that. No, I'm not going to have that. We need to do that. Like, you're telling me I can't have autonomy over my own body? No, we're going to open a clinic here that says I can.
That's right.
Fight me.
We don't have to obey in advance. We don't have to
No.
obey at all. Like, the rules are out
Yeah,
that we
it
used to
doesn't
abide
exist.
by.
You've already
And
told me
there's
the Constitution doesn't exist. Like, so let's write a new one. Let's write a new one that includes all of us this time. Thomas Jefferson thought we should write a new constitution every 19 years. He thought it was crazy that we were going to live on the same constitution. In the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, it says on the wall, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but basically the gist is, like, how can you expect us to live in the clothes we wore as children, right? Like, I would no sooner live under the rules that were created by me for people 250 years ago than I would to get into my short pants that I wore when I was 3 as a 30-year-old man, right? That's what we're trying to do right now. And even Jefferson was like, yeah, you can't do that. You got to keep evolving. And we stopped. And we have to start again. And we have to be like, where do we want to go? Because it doesn't need to be where these are taking us.
right. What is that charter? And I hope you're at the
Yeah,
table writing it, Lee.
that's what I want.
My
That's what I would love to be doing.
Well, you have truly been gloves off from the day that I first discovered your content online. It's so important. It is contagious. It matters so much. I ask this of everybody on the show. What gives you your courage? Truly. And you said you've been mouthy your whole life, so have I. You and I are very kindred in that respect. But truly, like where do you source it from now?
I think, and I would say this to everybody, I think start with self knowledge, right? Like, I ultimately like myself. I trust myself. I don't second guess myself when I know something to be right. And in a lot of ways, it's a lonely path, but it's also you end up surrounded by people who are like minded to you. So, first of all, courage comes from within. Um, it doesn't mean I'm not afraid. I am afraid. People tell me they're going to kill me every day. And, but I think that it's more that I know that my life is worth more than just this little life where I have a house or I have this clothes or I have whatever. My life is, it's bigger than that. It's worth more than that. And I don't know if that's because, I was diagnosed with a terrible disease, 17 years ago, and they gave me 2 years to live and I'm still here. So I feel like, oh, I'm on borrowed time. I may as well do something good with this time I've been given, something useful. But you mentioned as a child, I've always been like this. I've always known where my line was. I've always known where my morals were. I've always known that integrity really exists when you do the right thing when no one's watching. And I think that that is actually contagious because most people are actually like that. Most people are good people. They don't necessarily need to be the same religion or the same, political persuasion. Most people actually are good. And I think we need to speak to that part of them instead of the fearful part of them, because the fearful part is so easy to manipulate. But the good, hopeful part is the one that actually gets stuff done. So I think the thing that gives me courage is honestly from within, but I think everyone has that.
I love that. And that is contagious to hear that you can trust that because I think a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leigh, for your leadership, for everything that you're doing. As the stakes get higher, it's not easy work. I'm so glad that you're doing it, that you're around, and thanks for joining Gloves Off.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Let people know where they can find you.
Yes, I am Politics Girl on all the socials, and politicsgirl.com if you want to find those easily. And the Politics Girl podcast comes out once a week, drops on Tuesdays. So I have one coming out today, all about the war. And yeah, and I just hope you will follow, because this is the time where we need to be following the people that aren't doing it for the money and are doing it for the country. And I think that those are the people we should be supporting right now.
That's right. Well, thank you. These conversations and the courage of these leaders are only as contagious as the audiences we reach. So if you felt inspired by this conversation and episode, please consider sharing it on your own social platforms and with your friends and networks. If you don't already, please follow Courier Newsroom wherever you follow news and information, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you can be the first to know when our next conversation drops. So excited to be in this fight with all of you. And until next time, please take care of yourselves. We need you.